In part 2 of our series covering the benefits provided by bacteria of your large intestines, we're going to start by looking at how bacteria assist in the absorption of metals within our digestive system, with a special emphasis on iron. So iron is particularly important to humans because iron is a major component of a protein called hemoglobin that exists within your red blood cells. If you don't absorb iron, then your body cannot actually produce hemoglobin, which is very bad because hemoglobin exists to transport oxygen in our blood, which means no iron, no hemoglobin being formed, and no ability to transport oxygen. And there is actually a medical condition called anemia that refers to poor oxygen circulation, which can actually be caused by deficiencies of iron. Now, the fact that iron is a metal makes it relatively difficult for humans to absorb. Firstly, because iron metal is absolutely useless to us. You can't get iron into your cells by simply chewing on a sheet of iron or an iron nail. The only thing that you'll do is damage your digestive system. The usable form of iron is when it exists as an ion, either iron with a positive 2 charge or iron with a positive 3 charge like this. Now, the problem is that this form of iron exists when it is actually dissolved in water, which makes it difficult to get into your cell because it's basically impossible to pass dissolved iron or really any ion through your cell membrane, because your cell membrane is made of a type of fats called phospholipids, which are hydrophobic, meaning that water and any ion dissolved in water cannot actually pass through. Now, bacteria are actually much better at absorbing iron than we are, because bacteria have many different methods of active transport that actually allow them to pump iron in from the outside of the cell in the environment around, allowing them to internalize iron within them. Now, remember, in biological context, active transport means that bacteria are going to be spending energy to do this, but humans simply lack a lot of these specialized transportation proteins that bacteria use in order to make absorbing iron easier to do. Now, this is great for bacteria, but doesn't really appear to help us unless we consider what our cells can do with these bacteria that have absorbed the iron. So if we take a look at this white blood cell here, we see that this white blood cell is grabbing onto many bacteria here, and assuming that these bacteria have absorbed iron from your food that has made it to your large intestines, this white blood cell can actually consume these bacteria. Although perhaps a better word you can think of is it can harvest the bacteria simply by eating them. When this white blood cell consumes these bacteria, all of the iron that has been absorbed by these bacteria is now stored within the white blood cell after the digestive enzymes inside of the white blood cell break down the bacteria that they consume. Now, eventually, these white blood cells are going to travel to the liver, and therefore, the iron that is stored within these white blood cells that was harvested from bacteria that absorbed them can then be transferred within the liver, either into one of two locations. So the liver acts as a major storage location for iron within the body, because this is where your red blood cells, when your red blood cells get enough damage and need to be replaced, the iron that is stored inside of the liver can be directly transported into red blood cells so that new hemoglobin can be produced, allowing a constant recycling of red blood cells, which again is only possible because of bacterial abilities to absorb iron better than our own cells. Now, this is my personal favorite topic to talk about because I am a microbiological specialist, but basically there is a giant biological war that is occurring within your digestive system right now. So if we consider the bacteria that are purely helpful to us, we can refer to these as probiotic bacteria. We know that this is good, firstly, because of the smiley, and because the prefix pro is usually associated with being good. And the probiotic bacteria do not want you to get sick because you represent their shelter and their source of free food and free water, which means that any time that a pathogenic bacteria comes around, meaning bacteria that actively make you sick, these pathogenic bacteria represent competition for the probiotic bacteria, because not only are these pathogenic bacteria going to compete for a limited food supply, because again, all of the undigested food that makes it to your large intestine is not enough to feed both camps of bacteria, but they are also going to compete with each other for living space, because again, pathogenic bacteria will want to take advantage of the free food, water, and shelter that is provided. And so these bacteria engage in a literal war with each other, only instead of firearms as weapons, they use antibiotics. So antibiotics are simply chemicals that are produced by microorganisms. Many antibiotics that doctors provide for you are actually harvested and originally produced by bacteria, and probiotic bacteria can manufacture their variety of antibiotics that will kill pathogenic bacteria but leave them unharmed. And the way that antibiotics work is that they target specific structures that one species of bacteria has that another doesn't. And antibiotics are, for the most part, completely harmless to humans because antibiotics target structures that are only found in bacteria and not found in human cells. The problem is that pathogenic bacteria can make their own antibiotics, and that's why this war is actually two-sided, and both sides regularly engage in a biological arms race, trying to one-up each other by developing the more dangerous antibiotic to wipe each other out, because the winner, again, is going to secure the free food and water supply and the free living space of the intestines as their prize. Now, the way that antibiotics work is that some antibiotics prevent bacteria from reproducing, because even if this pathogenic bacteria isn't killed outright, if it can't reproduce, as soon as it dies of starvation or natural causes, it doesn't have any offspring to carry on the fight. And some antibiotics are quite simple and actually just kill the target bacteria directly, either by punching holes in its cell wall or interfering with the bacteria's ability to produce protein, therefore killing it by preventing it from forming the proteins that it needs for day-to-day survival. And this war is literally happening constantly and right now. And as long as the probiotic bacteria are victorious, you will stay healthy. But when they begin to lose, this is when you start feeling the symptoms of intestinal sickness, because pathogenic bacteria are actually winning this conflict. Now, the final benefit that intestinal bacteria provide is that they actually promote cell growth of the intestines, which seems a little bit strange, but actually it makes perfect sense, because your intestines are made out of cells. The more cells your intestines have, the more living space the bacteria have, because remember that your intestines represent the home of bacteria, which means the more cells your intestines are made of, the larger your intestines are going to be, and the more living space there are for bacteria. So if we take a look at this microscope photo here, you can see the intestinal wall actually has small holes within it here. And it's very likely that many of these holes in the intestinal tract were actually caused by damage during the battle that probiotic and pathogenic bacteria fight against each other for control of the living space in the intestines. Many times your own cells will suffer as casualties in these wars. But many bacteria that live inside of you produce special hormones that we call mitogens. And if we look at the prefix here, mito is the same prefix as in mitosis, which is the scientific word for cell divisions. And what mitogens do is that they actually induce, meaning that it's not exactly a natural process, but if these bacteria release mitogens into the intestines, these mitogens can trigger some of the cells of the large intestine to actually undergo cell division, again what we call mitosis, therefore triggering the cells of your intestine to reproduce. Now, this means that the intestines can actually heal themselves faster. So if the mitogens trigger these cells around these damaged parts of the intestines to reproduce, that would mean that the new cells are able to fill in the holes that are damaged of the intestines, allowing them to heal better, which is a benefit for you because, again, your intestines get better faster, and also a benefit for the bacteria because they have just secured more living space for more bacteria to be able to survive on the walls of your intestines, allowing both sides to benefit. This concludes our series on the bacteria that inhabit your large intestines and the benefits that they provide. To test your knowledge, you can take a look at this case study here that looks at not a probiotic bacterium, but a very, very pathogenic bacterium that not only causes problems for your body, but specifically the large intestine. So take a look at this case study and try the practice problems below in order to test your knowledge of the large intestines and of the bacteria that inhabit them.